You don't become high value by proving your worth. You become high value the moment you stop questioning it. I know why you're here. You've done the work. Or you've outgrown old rooms, old habits, old versions of yourself, and somewhere between who you were and who you're becoming, you started wondering if you're enough. Let me tell you this gently and clearly, you are not behind, you are being prepared. Being a high-value woman in 2026 is not about aesthetics. It's not about money, followers, or perfection. It's about alignment. It's about integrity. It's about becoming so rooted in who you are that nothing outside of you can shake your peace. Let me walk you through this journey, step by step. There comes a moment in every woman's life when she realizes she has been living with an invisible jury in her head. A room full of opinions that never applied for the job, yet somehow got hired anyway. Approval becomes the currency. A smile becomes armor. Silence becomes survival. I've been there. I remember walking into spaces where I edited myself before anyone else could, lowering my voice so it wouldn't sound too much, softening my truth so it wouldn't feel too strong, smiling through discomfort because I thought grace meant endurance. But slowly, painfully, I learned something no one teaches you early enough. Every time you betray yourself to be accepted, you abandon the very thing that makes you valuable. Choosing yourself doesn't start with confidence. It starts with exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that comes from living a life that isn't aligned. From saying yes when your soul is screaming no. From waiting to be chosen while your life quietly passes you by. A high-value woman in 2026 is not loud about her worth. She doesn't announce it. She doesn't demand validation. She simply stops asking for permission. She understands that approval is fleeting. People clap when it benefits them. They support you when you're convenient. And the moment you grow beyond their expectations, the applause fades. So she stops building her life on something that can disappear overnight. Choosing yourself means you begin to trust your inner voice more than outside noise. You pause before responding. You check in with your spirit before agreeing. You ask yourself one powerful question before every decision. Does this cost me my peace? And sometimes choosing yourself looks lonely. Let's be honest about that. People will misunderstand you. Some will accuse you of changing, others will call you selfish the moment you stop overgiving. But growth always offends comfort, and the woman you are becoming will require boundaries. The old version never had. You stop explaining your decisions to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop shrinking to fit into spaces that were never meant to hold your expansion. You stop negotiating your values just to avoid discomfort. This isn't arrogance. This is alignment. A high-value woman knows that self-worth is not something the world gives you. It's something you practice daily, in the way you speak to yourself when no one is listening, in the way you walk away from disrespect without needing the last word, in the way you honor your time, your energy, your body, your calling. She doesn't chase, she attracts. Not because she's perfect, but because she's anchored. She knows who she is and she's not in a rush to convince anyone else. And here's the quiet truth no one posts online. When you finally choose yourself, life doesn't instantly get easier, but it gets clearer. And clarity is power. You start making decisions from wisdom instead of wounds, from faith instead of fear, from purpose instead of people-pleasing. You learn that being liked is not the same as being respected. And being respected begins with how you treat yourself. Choosing yourself is the foundation. Without it, discipline collapses, healing stalls, independence feels fragile. But with it, everything else rises. Because the moment you stop asking the world who you're allowed to be, you step into the woman you were always meant to become. After you choose yourself, something interesting happens. You stop waiting to feel ready. You stop waiting for the mood, the spark, the perfect moment. Because life doesn't reward intention, it rewards execution. I used to believe motivation was the engine of success, that if I felt inspired enough, confident enough, energized enough, I would finally move. But motivation is emotional, and emotions change with the weather, the room, the people around you. Discipline is different. Discipline is a decision you make even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. There were days I didn't feel powerful, days I doubted my path, days I questioned whether the sacrifice was worth it. But I showed up anyway, not because I felt fearless, but because I felt responsible for my future. A high-value woman understands this. Confidence is not built by waiting, it's built by keeping promises to yourself. Every time you wake up when you said you would, every time you finish what you started, every time you choose growth over comfort, you deposit trust into yourself, and self-trust is everything. Discipline doesn't mean rigidity. It doesn't mean punishing yourself or living without joy. It means structure that supports your highest self. It means choosing the long-term vision over short-term relief. You begin to understand that comfort is seductive. It whispers, rest a little longer. Stay where you are. You deserve ease. But discipline gently responds, you deserve your potential. High-value women don't romanticize burnout, but they don't run from effort either. They respect the process. They know that talent without discipline becomes regret, that dreams without daily action become disappointment. There's a sacred rhythm to discipline: prayer, preparation, practice, repeat. On the days you feel inspired, discipline keeps you grounded. On the days you feel tired, discipline carries you forward. It becomes your anchor when emotions try to pull you off course. And here's the quiet transformation most people miss. Discipline changes how you see yourself. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries. You start seeing yourself as someone who does. And that identity shift is powerful. You walk differently. You speak with more certainty. You stop negotiating with your excuses. Because excuses are easy, but ease never built excellence. A high-value woman knows that discipline is an act of self-love. It's saying, I care about who I'm becoming too much to abandon her today. It's honoring your future self with the effort you give now. And no, discipline doesn't make life boring. It makes life intentional. It creates space for freedom later. Because when you master your habits, you master your direction. You stop being controlled by distractions, by instant gratification, by external validation. You become steady, reliable, rooted, and the world trusts disciplined women. Because discipline signals integrity. It says, I finish what I start. I show up even when it's uncomfortable. I don't disappear when things get hard. That kind of woman doesn't need to announce her value. It's felt. Discipline is not loud. It's quiet, daily, unseen. But over time it builds a life so solid that no storm can take it away. And once discipline becomes part of who you are, you're ready for the deeper work, the healing work. There comes a moment when discipline exposes something uncomfortable. You can be consistent, you can be focused, you can be productive, and still feel heavy inside. That's because unhealed pain doesn't disappear when you work harder. It waits, and then it speaks through your reactions, your patterns, your relationships. I had to learn this the hard way. There were moments I thought I was strong, when in reality, I was just guarded. I thought I was over things I had only buried, but buried pain has a voice. It shows up when you're triggered, when you overreact, when you shoo down, when you push away people who didn't deserve your walls. A high-value woman does not ignore her wounds. She faces them, not to relive the past, but to release it. Healing is not glamorous. It's quiet, it's honest, it's sitting with emotions you avoided for years. It's realizing that some of your survival habits no longer serve the woman you are becoming. You stop blaming others for your pain, not because they didn't hurt you, but because you refuse to give them power over your future. Healing begins the moment you take responsibility for your inner world. You learn to pause before reacting, to ask yourself, is this about now or is this about then? You start responding from awareness instead of old wounds. And yes, healing changes you. It softens you in ways that make you stronger. You stop seeing vulnerability as weakness. You stop performing strength and start embodying peace. A healed woman doesn't bleed on people who didn't cut her. She doesn't punish new love for old betrayal. She doesn't carry yesterday's pain into today's conversations. She understands that emotional maturity is a form of power. Forgiveness becomes less about them and more about you. Not forgetting, not excusing, but freeing yourself from the weight you were never meant to carry forever. Healing also teaches discernment. You learn the difference between red flags and triggers, between intuition and fear, between protecting yourself and isolating yourself. And with healing comes clarity. You stop attracting chaos because you're no longer familiar with it. You stop confusing intensity with connection. You stop calling anxiety love. Peace starts to feel normal. A high-value woman knows that healing is ongoing. There's no finish line. There's no badge for being fully healed. But there is progress. And progress changes everything. You become less reactive and more responsive. Less defensive and more grounded. Less consumed by the past and more present in the moment. Healing aligns you with your faith. It reminds you that you were never meant to carry everything alone. That surrender is strength. That grace is real. And here's the truth that changes the game. When you heal, your standards rise naturally. You don't have to force boundaries. They form themselves. You don't have to demand respect. You expect it. Because when your inner world is healthy, your outer world reflects it. Healing is the bridge between discipline and freedom, between survival and sovereignty. And once you've healed enough to trust yourself again, you're ready to stand on your own 2 feet. There is a different kind of confidence that comes from knowing you can stand on your own, not because you reject support, not because you don't believe in love, but because you are no longer afraid of being without it. I remember the first time I realized that dependence quietly steals your voice. When your survival is tied to someone else's approval, silence feels safer than truth. Compromise feels like loyalty. Fear dresses itself up as patience. A high-value woman understands this early enough to change her story. Independence is not about doing everything alone. It's about knowing you could, and choosing partnership from strength, not necessity. Financial independence shifts your posture. You don't rush, you don't settle, you don't stay in spaces that diminish you because leaving feels impossible. Money is not the goal. Freedom is. A woman who understands her finances understands herself. She learns how money moves, how it grows, how it protects her future, not out of greed, but out of responsibility. Because when you can take care of yourself, your decisions become honest. You stop accepting bare minimum effort because it's familiar. You stop negotiating respect in exchange for security. You stop calling anxiety stability. High-value women don't wait to be rescued. They build, they invest in skills, in education, in discipline that compounds over time. They understand delayed gratification. They respect the process of building something that lasts. Independence also changes how you love. You give from fullness, not fear. You choose, not cling. You stay because you want to, not because you have nowhere else to go. And this doesn't harden you, it softens you in the right places. You become generous without overgiving, supportive without self-abandonment, open without losing yourself. Financial independence is not just about numbers, it's about self-trust, about knowing you can handle life's unpredictability, that you don't crumble when circumstances change, and faith plays a role here too. You work diligently, but you don't worship money. You plan wisely, but you trust deeply. You understand that provision flows through discipline, but peace comes from faith. A high-value woman respects money, but she doesn't chase it at the cost of her integrity. She knows wealth built without values is expensive. So she builds slowly, intentionally, with purpose. And when independence becomes part of who you are, something powerful happens. You stop fearing loss. You know you can rebuild. You know you can recover. You know you can rise again. That certainty becomes unshakable confidence. And from that place, you become selective, not picky but discerning. You choose environments, relationships, and opportunities that align with your standards. Because when you can stand on your own, you refuse to kneel where you don't belong. And that strength prepares you for the next shift, the people you allow around you. At some point, you realize that your environment is either helping you grow or quietly holding you back. Energy is not abstract, it's felt. It shapes your thoughts, your habits, your confidence. And for a long time, I didn't understand why I felt drained even when nothing was wrong, why my spirit felt heavy after certain conversations, why my dreams felt smaller in certain rooms. Then it became clear, not everyone who loves you is meant to walk with you into your next season. A high-value woman becomes intentional about her surroundings, not cruel, not arrogant, intentional. She understands that access to her life is earned, not assumed. This doesn't mean cutting people off dramatically. It means paying attention. Who listens when you speak? Who supports your growth without feeling threatened? Who celebrates your wins without comparison? And just as importantly, who drains you? Who minimizes your dreams? Who keeps you tied to old versions of yourself? A high-value woman notices patterns. She doesn't ignore them. She responds with boundaries, not bitterness. There were people I loved deeply but had to love from a distance, not because they were bad, but because they were comfortable. And comfort can be dangerous when you're meant for more. You begin to realize that familiarity is not the same as alignment. And history is not a reason to sacrifice your future. So you curate, your conversations become cleaner, your circle becomes smaller, your standards become clearer. You stop oversharing your vision with people who haven't earned your vulnerability. You protect your ideas while they're still fragile. Because not everyone needs access to what God planted in you. High-value women don't explain their boundaries repeatedly. They don't argue about them, they enforce them quietly. They choose rooms that stretch them, rooms where they are not the smartest, the strongest, or the most accomplished, because growth requires humility. And when those rooms don't exist yet, they build them. They invest in communities that sharpen them, mentors that challenge them, friendships that feel safe, honest, and expansive. The environment also includes what you consume, what you watch, what you listen to, what you scroll through late at night. A high-value woman is mindful of what she feeds her mind, because what you consume eventually speaks through you. She limits exposure to chaos. She chooses peace over drama, not because she's fragile, but because she's focused. And here's the truth: outgrowing people will hurt. Letting go will sting. But staying in spaces that shrink you hurts longer. You don't owe everyone access to your next level. Some people are meant to be chapters, not the whole story. And when you protect your environment, something beautiful happens. Your clarity increases, your confidence stabilizes, your vision sharpens. You start moving with intention, with calm, with direction. Because the right environment doesn't just support who you are, it calls out who you're becoming. And once your space is aligned, your purpose becomes louder. There comes a moment when achievement alone stops feeling fulfilling. When success without meaning feels empty. When you realize that no matter how high you climb, something is missing if you climb alone. That moment is an invitation. A high-value woman eventually understands that her life is not just a personal journey. It's a responsibility. Her gifts were not given to impress. They were given to serve. I learned that purpose has a sound. It's quiet at first. It whispers when you're alone. It nudges you toward contribution, not comparison. And the more you listen, the clearer it becomes. Serving something bigger than your ego changes your posture. You stop asking, "How do I look?" and start asking, "How can I help?" This shift humbles you, and humility refines you. A woman rooted in service doesn't measure her worth by applause. She doesn't need constant recognition to stay committed, because her fulfillment comes from impact, not attention. Faith plays a powerful role here. When you believe your life has divine intention, you move differently. You show up even when it's inconvenient. You stay faithful even when results are delayed. You trust that obedience matters more than outcome. High-value women understand that influence is not about visibility. It's about consistency. It's about showing up with integrity when no one is watching. Service also protects you from ego, from arrogance, from entitlement. It reminds you that talent is a gift, opportunity is a blessing, and success is a responsibility. You begin to ask deeper questions. Who benefits from my growth? Who am I making the path easier for? Who is watching me survive what they're still afraid to face? A woman who serves understands that leadership is not dominance. It's stewardship. She lifts as she rises. She opens doors instead of guarding them. She creates space instead of competition. And here's the paradox. The more you serve, the more fulfilled you feel, the more grounded you become, the less shaken you are by external chaos. Purpose anchors you when life gets loud. It keeps you steady when success comes quickly. It humbles you when praise arrives. High-value women don't ask, "What can I get?" They ask, "What am I called to give?" And giving doesn't always mean money. Sometimes it's presence. Sometimes it's wisdom. Sometimes it's courage. Sometimes it's simply being an example. Living with purpose also sharpens your discernment. You stop wasting energy on distractions. You say no more often. You protect your time like the sacred resource it is. Because when you know your why, you stop chasing noise. Faith becomes your compass, not perfection. Faith. You trust that every season is teaching you something, that every delay is preparing you for responsibility, that your life is unfolding exactly as it should. A high-value woman doesn't rush purpose. She grows into it. And when your life is rooted in service, something remarkable happens. Your confidence deepens. Your gratitude expands. Your impact multiplies. Because a life lived only for self eventually feels small, but a life lived for something bigger than you. That kind of life leaves a mark. And once purpose grounds you, you learn the final mastery, emotional sovereignty. There is a quiet power that cannot be shaken by opinion, rejection, or chaos. It doesn't rush, it doesn't react, it observes and then it decides. That is emotional sovereignty. A high-value woman learns that her emotions are information, not instructions. She feels deeply, but she doesn't let feelings drive her life. She understands that reacting gives away power while responding preserves it. I wasn't always this way. There were moments when emotions controlled my choices, when anger spoke before wisdom, when fear disguised itself as intuition, when silence became avoidance instead of peace. But growth teaches you something vital. Not every emotion deserves a response. You begin to pause, to breathe, to ask yourself what is really being triggered here. And in that pause, you reclaim control. Emotional sovereignty means you stop outsourcing your peace. You don't let other people's moods decide your state of mind. You don't allow disrespect to drag you into reaction. You don't explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding. This doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. A high-value woman knows when to speak and when to walk away. She knows that silence is sometimes strength, that walking away with grace is more powerful than staying to prove a point. She also understands her patterns. She knows what drains her, what destabilizes her, what pulls her back into old versions of herself. And she protects herself accordingly. Emotional maturity allows you to sit with discomfort without collapsing, to have hard conversations without losing your composure, to hear criticism without losing your identity. You stop taking everything personally. You stop internalizing things that were never about you, because when you know who you are, external noise loses volume. Faith anchors this kind of strength. It reminds you that you don't have to control everything, that surrender is not weakness, that peace comes from trust, not force. A woman with emotional sovereignty is not easily provoked, not because she's numb, but because she's grounded. She chooses calm over chaos, clarity over confusion, peace over performance. And here's the truth. Most people miss emotional control is the highest form of self-respect. It allows you to love without losing yourself, to lead without dominating, to stand firm without becoming rigid. You stop seeking closure from people who can't give it. You stop reopening doors God already closed. You stop revisiting versions of yourself you already outgrew. You become selective with your energy, intentional with your words, patient with your process. And from that place you move through the world differently, not hurried, not defensive, not desperate, but rooted. This is what it means to be a high-value woman in 2026. Not perfect, not untouchable, but aligned. You choose yourself. You practice discipline. You heal your wounds. You build independence. You protect your environment. You live with purpose. And you govern your inner world with grace. You don't need permission to shine. You don't need validation to move forward. You don't need to explain your growths. Stand in your truth. Walk in why. Our faith. Honor the woman you are becoming, because when you do, the world doesn't define you. You define the world you're willing to live in. And if you remember nothing else, remember this. You were not created by accident. You were designed with intention, shaped through resistance and strengthened by faith. Every delay you survived refined you. Every tear you hid taught you endurance. Every time you chose growth over comfort, heaven took note. Do not wait for permission to become who you already are. Walk in discipline when motivation fades. Stand in truth when approval disappears. Trust God when the path feels unclear. The world will try to rush you, label you, shrink you. Let it try. You are rooted, and what is rooted cannot be shaken. So rise not loudly but boldly. Serve with humility, lead with grace, protect your peace like it is sacred, because it is. And when doubt whispers, answer with action. When fear shows up, move forward anyway, because faith is not believing it will be easy. Faith is believing it will be worth it. Don't just dream about the woman you want to become. Honor her, show up for her, live like she's already watching you. Your time is now, your calling is real, and the life meant for you is waiting on your courage. Step forward and let your life testify.